Hi, I'm Jack Scalia, and welcome to our show, Proud to Serve. When I'm asked about my politics, it's simple. I stand for the national anthem. I believe in the red, white, and blue, mom's apple pie, a dog named Spot, God, guns, grits, our men and women who serve in uniform, protect and watch over our great nation, and our first responders. However, Proud to Serve is about our guests, people who have had their fair share of trials and tribulations and have managed to overcome them. And this is something that we're all looking for in people, is to inspire us. And what they have done is they have honored their creation, they have trusted their instinct, they are believing in their dreams, therefore they create their destiny. And one of those people that have done that so far is our guest today. She has been a model, she is an author, she is a television broadcaster. She's tall, she's blonde, she's beautiful, and she has a heart of gold. Please welcome to the show, Annie Nelson.
Good morning, folks.
Thank you for being here.
How are you?
Let's talk.
Okay.
Okay, so that's that initial introduction of who you are. However,
that's not who I am.
Well, it's part of who you are, but not who you've become.
True.
And when I say with a heart of gold, I mean I truly mean it.
Thank you.
You created the American Soldier Network. You went on into creating Rucksack. You've gone on and you're part of the Navy, the U.S. Navy SEAL world. I mean, you've kind of integrated yourself into that, and you have brought a lot of the celebrities that come out of Hollywood, have included them, made them part of it. So where is this, like your outfit today, this red, white, and blue?
This was just for you.
All right, thank you.
This is just for you.
I appreciate that. So talk to the audience and let them in on what has motivated you. What was the initial start? You started with, if I remember correctly, you had a relationship with someone who was in the War on Terror and was wounded.
I did. I had
pen pals.
3 pen pals, and They were Marines who were stationed in Camp Pendleton, and were over in Iraq back in 2004. And after 9/11, I wanted to do something, but my dad was drafted, and he was too tall to serve, and I had 2 uncles that served in the Army during the Korean conflict who never spoke of their service. So I didn't know how to give back or how to capture that relationship with the community, because if you're not in it, you're not in it.
Right.
And so I found a postcard that my grandpa had written my grandmother during the beaches of Normandy when he served. He was a Norwegian citizen, and he served in the U.S. Army. And I thought I could pen pal, because I read his letter to my grandma, and I thought I could do that, you know. Now how do I find them? And so I had 3 Marines that were from Illinois, which is where my mom's from, and we started pen paling back and forth. And back then, we didn't have social media. We didn't have all these different ways to communicate. We had pen and paper, and we had AOL Instant Messenger. And so I would connect with these guys on AOL Instant Messenger if they got back to a FOB, forward operating base, if they had time, or I'd get pen and paper and we'd write back and forth. And so everybody around me was kind of captivated by this relationship, because it was like everybody wanted a piece of it, but they didn't know how to do that either.
Right.
So the letters turned into boxes, which turned into packages. And of the 3, the one that wrote back the most was Jesse Shirts, and he was busy doing the construction and the support of the team that was there, and the other 2 Marines were kind of actually engaged in the fight. And so I would communicate with Jesse more than the other 2.
Right.
And then December 22nd of 2004, Jesse and Tyler, the other one, were sitting back to back in a caravan of trucks that were going through Iraq, and they were hit by a suicide bomber. And I was notified that Jesse didn't make it and that Tyler was in Germany in really bad shape. Still being outside the community, I didn't know how to really wrap my head around that, because I had never met these kids in person. They were just pen pals. And I didn't know, well, what do you do with that information? I mean, for 6 months, they were my extracurricular activity.
Right.
So I bundled up my letters from Jesse, because I thought if that was my son, that would be a neat keepsake. And I sent him to his parents in Illinois with a thank you letter. Because when I went to Hallmark, there was no sympathy card for someone you don't know. There was, how do you send someone a card that you've never met? And I sent them a thank you letter for their service and said, I thought you would like this keepsake of your son, and didn't hear anything back. And so then I went to focus on Tyler, and we had Christmas and we had New Year's. And then about 2 weeks into 2005, my cell phone rang, and it was a woman's voice, and she said, Annie, this is Paula, Jesse's mom. And of course, I got all excited and went 0 to 60 real quick, and she was very short, very stern, and not real friendly. And she said, I want you to know I'm at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. Jesse survived that blast. He just woke from a coma. He's facing double amputation. He's burnt over 80% of his body, and he's asking for his pen pal, will you come?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And so what do? You go.
Right.
And I had never been to an Army hospital, never been to a VA.
Well, you go. A lot of people may not go.
Yeah.
And that's what separates you from possibly me, and I think a vast majority of the people. So I just want to acknowledge that. That's a reaction when someone says that someone in the military, you're a hero. I was just doing my job.
Yeah.
And so, but no, that's who tells us who you are. You go, and you did. And
I did. The Marine Corps actually flew me there to Brooke Army Medical Center, and I stayed in the Fisher House, which was an experience I would never give back in a million years. In 04 and 05, we were only bringing back guys. We weren't bringing back wounded women. So when I got down there, I met and went into a world I knew nothing about. And Jesse was there, and he became a single leg amputee below the knee. We saved the other leg. And Tyler was there at the same time.
Wow.
And so not only did I get to see them live and in person, and it just solidified more of our friendship, but I met amazing men and women that not only serve at Brooke Army Medical Center, but that were patients. And Jesse would be like, "Oh, she's from Hollywood," and I'd be like, "No, I'm Orange County," and we'd
OC.
yeah, down south, and we'd run in and visit other guys that were wounded, and I'd be pushing the wheelchair, and they would all, because again, in the hospital, they didn't have anything. They had a TV, and they had communication. There wasn't all the access to media that they had back then, but because Jesse was painting me as that connection to Hollywood, they would reach their remote control and look at me and say, "Does America support us?"
Wow.
And they weren't seeing it on the television. So that's when I came home after a couple of visits and that same theme kind of coming across my plate. And I went to my entertainment attorney and I said, "I know what I'm supposed to do." And he looked at me and I said, "We're going to change Angels Within," which is a group I had started back in '96. We're going to make it an all-veteran organization, American Soldier Network. And the initial intent was to raise television shows that had content that honored, supported, and celebrated our veteran community and raised awareness to what their needs were at home. Because there are a lot of groups, and there have been a lot of groups, that were doing things for deployed, sending boxes, sending care packages, communicating back and forth. But when they come home, I saw a lot of people falling through the cracks. And this was back in 04. This was before it's the thing to do to start a veterans organization. But so Frank looked at me and he said, "Honey, I'll back you in any way you need to, but you need to know it's going to be the toughest thing you've ever done. They're going to paint you in a bucket, make it political, and Hollywood is not going to support you."
And?
It was the toughest thing I've ever done.
Right. And Hollywood?
Not very many of them have supported.
But there were a few out there.
There are. There's a wonderful handful of individuals that take the politics out of it.
Now, did you write your book, The Story of Annie Nelson, after that experience?
Yes. Well, back in '94, way before this experience, I was a flight attendant and I was beat up by passengers who broke my back on the plane in the air. And
didn't hear about that one.
Yeah. And I was diagnosed back then with post-traumatic stress syndrome. And back then I started advocating that it's not a syndrome.
Right.
It's post-traumatic stress.
Right.
It's not a life sentence. And fast forward, then I had the brain tumor and I had 6 concussions as an adult. And it was just, for me, it was God just putting tools in my toolbox to better communicate and understand the veteran community. So my journey has been one that, for me, was laid out by divine intervention. And I went through the things that I went through so that I could better understand and be equipped to help the veteran community.
Right, and so you fall right into that thing that I talked about at the beginning of the show, honoring your creation, trusting your instinct, because you got the message, you heard that call where you're supposed to go, what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And then you believed in your dream, and you're creating your destiny.
Trying.
So you fit right, but you're doing an outstanding job. So
Thank
now,
you.
Tell us about, well, we all get to watch you, and some of us to participate with you. And this is not the first time we've spent time together.
No.
So, and it's all been before cameras and, radio shows and all of that. So we actually got to be around the people that were, I believe, inspiring us. Correct. Because of what they were doing. And then you took it to another level. You have taken it to another level.
Yes.
So then you go out and you create a civilian, the American Soldier Network. Mm-hmm. So, and then, I mean, Kevin Sorbo wrote the forward to your book.
Yes.
And then Joe Montagna's paid just beautiful homage to you with incredible
I'm blessed.
words. Absolutely. But these are great, also patriotic guys that we're talking about. Not that you have to be that way or how we are. But so where did the American Soldier Network come from?
Well, it started with the pen pal friendship, and then when I started to want to do more, I learned very quickly that the veteran community is a very closed community, and you have to earn your way to their trust, which is rightfully so, and you need to learn a whole lot about them and the different branches because they all act completely different. I mean, yes, when they go downrange, they're all together, but they don't have the same ranks, they don't have the same rules, they don't have the same jokes, they don't have the same, it's a whole different way of life. And after I came home and I started to want to do more, it was bizarre because the women that had zero military connections, people were falling in my lap. One of my dearest friends is Sergeant Major Carlton Kent. He was a 16th Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. He's like a rock star in the Marine Corps. Well, how did I become friends with him? I mean, it was like if there was just, people were coming in my lap. And then the Navy SEAL community, Medal of Honor Mike Thornton had become a dear friend, and a lot of the other guys, I was in events and supporting them, and I'd get invited to things and places, and those just became true friendships. And out of those friendships, I learned and kind of earned my way to be their little sister or their big sister. And the relationships grew into more outreach, and more outreach grew into more people getting involved. And then, unfortunately, the suicide epidemic hit home a few years ago. I buried 30 of my individual relationships in 1 year. There was nothing about that. I mean, you hear snippets, but you don't see and hear the impact of what's happening in that part of the world. And then the VA did that study with 22, and unfortunately it was never the right study. It was 21 states, and it never did the entire veteran populace. It did a small section. But that number sort of gravitated, and a bunch of people started having all these organizations pop up that had that number in it, and it became about that number and glamorizing something that it needs to be about the human being and that we can't lose anymore. So we've now turned our focus to suicide prevention and the creation of Ruck Up. And Ruck just launched. It was a $50,000 investment in about an 8-month building process, but it's a platform for the entire veteran and military community and their spouses or their caregivers. And there's a unique piece to Ruck is there's a thing called the foxhole. And what I have learned watching the community and watching all the social media do a true disservice to our veteran community was they don't have a space on the internet that they can connect with each other, support each other, help each other, that's truly secured and private for them that nobody else can get into. So within Ruck Up is a thing called the Foxhole, and the Foxhole is ID verified. We partnered with ID Me, and so only veterans and military can get in the Foxhole. It's monitored by veterans and military. It was my brainchild, but I can't get in there, and I don't want to because it's for them. And it's a way that the veteran community can truly connect, reach out, find people that they haven't found in a long time. If the guys are in parts of the country that doesn't have a VFW or an American Legion or a way to connect, they can connect that way and try to reach out and find others in their local area. And then there's a place in Ruck Up called the Aid Station. And the Aid Station is, if you type in your zip code, it pops up with facilities around the country that treat. They don't take you fishing, they don't take you surfing, they don't take you on vacations. Those are wonderful bonding experiences, but they're not a cure. And you need to do the work. And whatever the work is, it's going to be individual. There's not a Band-Aid and a one-size-fits-all treatment for brain trauma or for TBI or for PTS. So Aid Station has facilities across the U.S. that are treatment facilities that deal with CTE, TBI, PTS, addiction, depression, and that are veteran-friendly and that are outside the VA system.
Okay, just real quick, let me jump to something that's personal about you, and you can talk about it if you like, but you did mention brain trauma, you did mention TBI. You have
all of the above.
You have all of the above and firsthand experience with it. So talk to the audience a little bit about that. And then when we come back from you talking about that, I wanted you to explain to the audience about Ruck Up, where that comes from.
Okay.
So I speak military lexicon, but perhaps just a little bit. But you have that experience about TBI and brain trauma.
I do. Well, the first one was back when I was a flight attendant and I was beat up by passengers and they broke my back and I had a concussion at that time. And that turned into post-traumatic stress, which I didn't know that's what it was. But when you have things and you can't sleep at night and you have constantly reliving that moment over and over again and you go into certain areas and people make a jittery move behind you and you jump because you've been accosted. And then I finally decided that I couldn't do it on my own. And you don't want to burden your mom and dad. I'm an only child, and you know my parents. And I had to figure out a way to deal with what was happening in my mental state and the depression. And I saw so many people go down the path of drugs and alcohol, and it scared me because I didn't want that to happen to me. And I don't have an addictive personality, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't become that way. So I chose my pastors, and I chose a professional psychiatrist and learned that I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome. and that, like I said, it wasn't a life sentence, but you have to do the work. I mean, you really do, and everybody's journey with that is going to be different. And then fast forward, I've had 6 concussions as freak accidents, and those have added to different. They don't necessarily each have PTS within their own thing, but they can trigger you and put you back to where you were when your brain was playing games with you and making you think things. And your brain's a powerful tool, and a lot of times you can't control it.
I've wasted mine, so it doesn't work. But go ahead.
But then in 2010, I was diagnosed with a 6.5 centimeter tumor.
Right, which is about the size of a
larger than a
golf
ball.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was in a unique situation that it was an acoustic neuroma, and it was not cancerous, but the size and the location, it was going to kill me. And so I had no choice but to.
But what's an interesting part of that story, though, is that you were diagnosed with this PTS, but also the brain tumor, that the proper word for it is?
Acoustic neuroma.
Acoustic neuroma. And then they wanted you to get a second opinion while you were at the hospital, and you mentioned you dropped someone's name.
Yeah.
And they said what?
Dr. Janata, I was at Mission Hospital where they found it. And for some reason, everybody was like, just do the surgery, and they wanted to cut that night. And I was like, no, this is my brain, and the thing is huge. And so I had called a bunch of my celebrity friends, and I'm like, you guys, I'm in trouble. What do you think I should do? Do you know anybody that's in this, that does this? And everybody unanimously came back, Dr. Stephen Janata at USC. And so I researched him, and I said, okay, get me to him. How do I get there? And so people made some phone calls and got through to Dr. G, and he said, bring her up here. And the surgeon at Mission Hospital said, you're too risky to move. Who do you think you want to go see? And I said, Dr. Stephen Janata. And he said, well, he's the best there is. If he'll take you.
And you said?
He's waiting.
I love that. But you know what's an example of that? And because of who you are and what you are, and trusting that essence that you're created with, we're all created with it, you listen to it. Because people, I included many times, said, it's like, don't do that. And I go, no, I'm going to do it anyway. Or you should do that. I'm like, nah. And so you heard this essence went off, and you said, no, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We're not going to rush, so, and that shows a part of a forte, a character, a force in character in Italian. So there's something very powerful about that. And that's like trusting your instinct.
Yes.
And that's just exemplary. So you go and you have the operation, and Dr.
10 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow.
We had some situations on the OR, which I was out, so I couldn't tell you, but I'm sure he has a really good story behind what we went through that day. And then when I woke up, I had lost my face. It looked like I had a stroke. This eye didn't work. My dropped in my face, and they took my hearing. So when I woke up, your brain, you're a full hearing person, and then when you wake up, your brain has no hearing on the right side. It's like an amputation in a way, because they took that to get the tumor and to save my life. And so when I woke up, I was constantly, the minute I'd open my eyes, I just projectile, because my brain had no balance. I had lost my balance. I had lost my hearing. I was huge. I was 35 pounds extra because of the Decadron drug, which they use for brains, and you just gain an insane amount of weight. So I looked like a half-smiling, half-winking sumo wrestler. And it was not sexy.
But it's funny.
Yeah, but it wasn't sexy.
I'm sorry, sweetheart.
They gave me that mirror, and I was like, oh, we got some work to do.
You just look at one side.
Yeah, I'm like, I couldn't drink it. It would dribble out. And you're like, oh, come on. So then it went into a 2-year learning how to walk all over and talk all over. And
okay, so that, that's like, so this kind of experience you've been through, weathering the storm, your trials, your tribulations, and what you're doing, has that crossed over into the guys and the gals that you've spent time with?
Oh, by far. And it's funny because they're amazing. I mean, the bravery and the selflessness and the dedication of anyone that's worn our nation's uniform, I'm in awe.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that I could do that's enough for what they do. Because I didn't do that, and I couldn't do that. I don't have the fortitude to do what they do. But when we swap horror stories, I guess you would say, a lot of times they'll be like, well, have you tried this? Or if there's a new treatment, which we just had one that I sampled it. I went into a specialized treatment for PTS with magnetic waves, and Dr. Murphy, Kevin Murphy out of San Diego. And so Dr. Murphy treated me, and they all wanted me to do it first. I'm like, wait a minute, you guys carry around weapons.
Can I talk to Dr. Giannato again?
Yeah, you go ahead and you go try it. So I did, and then because of what I did, we were able to get a lot more guys to go on in, and now they're trying it. But it's an individual thing. Like I said, what might work for me might not work for somebody else. I think the unique part of me is I do have a devout faith. I'm extremely centered in my faith, and that keeps me going every day. And if just a little bit of that would rub off into somebody that's struggling, I'm not a Bible thumper, but you got to have something to get you through and know that you're not alone. Because a lot of times families and friends, when you have a long-term thing, they don't want to hear about it. I mean, they don't want to see you struggle, and you struggle alone.
Well, thank you for sharing that part. I'm sure that it's our audience was just as much in awe of you talking about it, and so thank you for that. But where did Ruck Up come from?
Ruck is a military term. They carry their rucksack. And when I had the idea to create the platform, and different ideas were popping around, I reached out to them. I had reached out to some Army Rangers and a couple SEALs and a couple other Special Forces guys, and I said, what should I call it? What do we do? Like, I knew I wanted the foxhole, and that was my baby, because that's an all-generation term, you know, from Vietnam, Korea, current day. I mean, that's their space. And I wanted that to be their sacred space. And then the guys were like, Ruck Up. And, you know, get up, don't quit. There's some colorful language that could go around that aren't becoming of a lady, but that basically would kind of let the community know you got to ruck up and you got to suck it up and go do the work.
Andy, thank you for being here. Thank you for telling us your story, part of your story, and there's so much more we have to talk about. Where can our viewing audience, find you?
They can find me on Facebook, social media, any of that. All of my thing is Annie Nelson. American Soldier Network is AmericanSoldierNetwork.org. Ruck Up for the veteran and military community is ruckup.org. And just reach out. That's what it's all about.
Well, thank you for all that you're doing and contributing to our men and women in uniform.
And you the same.
Well, honor and a pleasure. Humbled as you are, sure. We always are. At the same time, I want to thank you for inspiring me and inspiring, I'm sure, many of our viewers out there with what you've talked about. I mean, you're an exemplary example for us to follow, the things that you've done and the things that you've accomplished and the things that you've pushed through. So thank you for being here and part of our launch with Proud to Serve.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and see where this goes for you.
Thank you, Dawn. I told you, tall, beautiful, blonde, and a heart of gold.
Thank you.
As always, God, family, country. Godspeed you all.